Are there just landmines for like malpractice all over the place, like missing deadlines, suing the wrong people, suing them in the wrong claims or the wrong courts?
There's, to an extent, there are landmines there for folks who maybe who aren't familiar with it. Just a typical auto crash attorney, and they never had a case like that, and they don't exactly know what to do. But the good thing is, because it's a niche area, but there's also very good niche attorneys here in the New Orleans area, South Louisiana, that you can turn to and be like, hey, this is what I got going on. Can we co-counsel? Can I refer it? What's going on here? That you can help yourself by not getting involved sometimes if you're not comfortable, or you can learn from some great legal minds.
Welcome to the Founding Partner Podcast. Join your host, Jonathan Hawkins, as we explore the fascinating stories of successful law firm founders. We'll uncover their beginnings, triumph over challenges, and practice growth. Whether you aspire to launch your own firm, have an entrepreneurial spirit, or are just curious about the legal business, you're in the right place. Let's dive in.
Welcome to Founding Partner Podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Hawkins. Really looking forward to today's conversation. Somebody that I've met recently. We've got a lot in common. We were both engineers, undergrad. We both grew up on the Gulf Coast. He's a little bit west of me, or where I grew up. But happy to have Loyd Bourgeois on the podcast this week. So Loyd is a disability and personal injury lawyer down in Louisiana, sort of near New Orleans, I think. But I'll let you explain. Why don't you introduce yourself, Loyd?
Hey, Loyd Bourgeois, Jonathan said, just west of New Orleans, maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes if traffic is bad. But do a lot of Social Security, disability, personal injury cases down here.
So tell us about your firm. So how many folks do you have? How many attorneys? How many staff? How do you guys have it staffed up?
So we're a small firm. I have 8 total people right now. I mean, we're always trying to hire more. It always feels like we need another one, at least week by week. Some weeks it doesn't feel that way. But I have one other attorney. He handles most of our injury stuff along with myself. And then I have a paralegal / eligible for direct pay non-attorney Social Security representative. It's just a long acronym that they put out there. So anyway, she basically can practice in front of Social Security Administration. She's certified to do that. And so she handles most of our disability stuff, me helping out as needed. And then we have in marketing, a couple of assistants, 2 virtual assistants over in the Philippines. And we're on the cusp, like I was saying, on the cusp of needing to grow bigger, wanting to grow bigger, but always, is it the time? Is it not the time?
It's a decision. We'll get into that in a minute. But I'm convinced you have to decide to do it because you just have to go for it at some point. I mean, it could happen by accident, maybe, but I think you have to decide.
We have this saying around here, it comes from Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. If we just hire one more, the work will come. There will be enough. We'll get more cases. It'll work out, which always sounds great in theory. And then you're like, okay, how are we going to pay for this person until that happens?
And it's hard in a contingency practice where you don't have the constant cash flow, I'm sure.
It's very difficult. Especially like for us, we have probably 30% to 70% of our cases are disability cases. 30-ish% are injury cases, but that 2/3 to 70% of our caseload is a smaller revenue portion of our practice than that percentage by a lot. But when you have that many cases, it just takes a lot of people to work them. And in those cases, there's a lot of externality in dealing with those cases that we don't really have a lot of control over. It makes it even more difficult than just a regular contingency fee practice to kind of figure that out.
So let's talk about injury practice real quick. So growing up on the water, I imagine if you're here in Atlanta, you're thinking car wrecks or trucking wrecks. Down there on the coast, I'm sure you have those. But are there like water injury type cases too? And are those different?
Yeah, they are. We have Jones Act seaman cases, which are workers who are tied to a vessel. And we have the river runs through our parish. So you have a lot of folks who are working on barges, tugboats, ocean-going vessels. You have a really built-out oil industry here in South Louisiana. So sometimes you have some Jones Act cases there, but you have Harbor Workers Compensation Act cases, which is like a federal workers' comp type of scheme for people who work in harbors and are longshoremen. So they're not tied to a vessel, even though they may work on the water from time to time. They're not tied to a vessel. They are more land-based. They may have to go out, and so they get hurt and injured. So you do have a ton of those cases. They're very specialized, and there's different criteria and factors that go into those cases than your typical auto crash cases.
It sounds complicated. It sounds like you got to maneuver, I guess, the Jones Act. Is that federal cases too?
The Jones Act's weird. You can file it both either in state or federal. It's just the way that the act was written. Just some criteria about, is it a seaman? So that's usually where a lot of the battle is in the Jones Act cases. Is the injured party an actual seaman? Are they tied to this vessel? Or are they not tied to the vessel? And there's like voluminous case law on that. And it's like a battle in many cases. Fifth Circuit has made its kind of mark on American jurisprudence a lot in Jones Act cases.
So are there just landmines for like malpractice all over the place, like missing deadlines, suing the wrong people, suing them in the wrong claims or the wrong courts? Is that
Yeah.
it?
There's to an extent, there are landmines there for folks who maybe who aren't familiar with it. Just a typical auto crash attorney, and they never had a case like that, and they don't exactly know what to do. But the good thing is, because it's a niche area, but there's also very good niche attorneys here in the New Orleans area, South Louisiana, that you can turn to and be like, hey, this is what I got going on. Can we co-counsel? Can I refer it? What's going on here? That you can help yourself by not getting involved sometimes if you're not comfortable, or you can learn from some great legal minds.
Let's go back before law. So like I mentioned, you're an engineer. I guess first thing is, what kind of engineer, and did you actually work as an engineer before law?
So I did civil and environmental engineering at LSU, and I passed the fundamentals of engineering exam. Before you become the PE, you got to do that. And I worked in chemical manufacturing industries during college. So I was pretty proactive. My stepdad worked at a plant. He got me a first job at one. And then after that, we'll just meet people. If they worked at a plant, I'd be like, hey, man, I'm in engineering school. What can I do to come work over there? And I ended up getting some jobs, internships through that, like 1 year. And then the next year, I went through our like formal program at school and did formal internship with, at the time it was Monsanto, now it's Bayer, which has a really, I think it's like their biggest Roundup facility is right in there. And so I worked there for 2 summers doing environmental engineering grunt work.
Oh, wow. Is that what led you to say, yeah, I'd rather be a lawyer? What led you to that point?
Yeah, it pretty much was. Look, the pay was great, but especially for a college student, the pay was great. The people were great. But the work that we were doing and the work I was seeing the other engineers do was just not what I thought it would be. A little bit about like my background. I came from a very poor family. I didn't have anybody in my family who went to college. None of my aunts and uncles went to college. None of my even extended family that I knew had ever gone to college. My grandparents didn't go to college. My mom didn't graduate high school. My grandmother didn't graduate high school. My great grandmother couldn't read. So I just got kind of lucky and hit the genetic lottery and was smart. And people were like, oh, you're good at math. You're good at science, go be an engineer. And I knew I liked being outside and hunting and fishing and going out and doing surf fishing. And in South Louisiana, the coastal erosion was a big issue. It still is a big issue, but we heard about a lot when I was a kid. And I just remember talking to people if you want to help with coastal erosion, go learn in environmental engineering. You can help make an impact on this. I was like, that sounds great. I'm going to go do that. And I went to engineering school and I was working in a chemical manufacturing facility, just running reports on air quality metrics and water effluent chemicals. And I was like, this is not what I had in mind. The people were great. And they're like, look, it can get exciting sometimes, but for the most part, this is how it's going to be. You're kind of working within this framework of these permits and these parameters, and you have some input sometimes of how to fix things, but usually it's out of our hands. We just get some directives from corporate, make sure our numbers are right. And I was like, who has more input on that stuff? And they're like, well, we have these corporate environmental people, and we have these environmental lawyers that help do all our permitting and everything. Maybe if I can't actually go work in the environment and do that, then maybe I can just be the lawyer to help start directing this stuff. And that's why I went to law school.
Did you think you'd want to be an environmental lawyer, or did you have?
Yeah,
Oh,
I thought I would. And then at the time, Aaron Brockovich came out, the Civil Action came out. And so you see all this stuff. And I was like, man, that's awesome. If I can do those things, like helping, getting back to what you really believe in, helping the environment, making things safer, helping your community, also helping people remove these kind of pollutants from the world, or at least holding people accountable. And yeah, I went to Tulane Law School, got like the environmental law certificate, wrote on the journal there. It was a great experience, but then most of the jobs are not like that.
I know. It's like that's the funny thing. A lot of people think about, I want to be in environmental law because they want to help the environment, but it seems like most of the jobs are representing the companies.
Yeah,
It's
that's right.
and they're doing what they
Lobbying to
do,
make
right?
the laws looser, or you're litigating to say why it's not as bad or get around it, or your company did fine. Which, look, I respect those jobs, but that wasn't my vision. Yeah, that's when I went in. That's what I thought it would be, you know?
It's funny too, as an engineer myself, whenever I told people in law school or right after that I was, in law school, we're going to be a lawyer, they're always like, oh, you're going to be a patent lawyer. You probably got that too. And I know back then there was like a automatic premium on the salary if that's what you did, but I
Right.
had no interest in that at all. I don't know if you even looked at that.
Yeah. I didn't look at it the same way. A lot of people were like, oh, you must be coming to do patent law. Like, I was just a dumb kid, man. Like, I didn't even know what engineering was when I went to engineering school, and then I went to law school, so I'm going to be an environmental lawyer. I'm like, oh, you can be a patent lawyer. I was like, I don't know what that is.
They get paid a lot more. Okay, yeah, I'll look at that. All
Yeah.
right, so you come out of law school. What did you go do? So you thought about environmental and you didn't do that. So what was your first job out?
Yeah, it was an interesting time in New Orleans. I graduated like in May, and Katrina hit in August, the end of August. I took the bar in July, and it was great. And then we get some phone calls or messages like, hey, we might have lost the bar exam, certain portions of them. And so at that point, it was really just whatever job I could get. You know, I did well. I had a job lined up before, but no one knew if those things were going to still exist. And so it took a few weeks for us to figure out exactly what I was going to do. The firm I ended up working for, they did a lot of the maritime stuff we started the conversation with. I did a lot of Longshore Harbor Workers' Compensation Act, maritime law, collisions, elisions, vessels against vessels. So I did that for 6 months, and the work was fine, but I hated the people. It was just a place that was toxic beyond belief, and I could not believe anyone would spend their whole life working in a place like that. And so 6 months in, I was like, I'm out. I'm not doing this. And I think my son was like 8 months old at the time, and I told him, I'm not doing this anymore. And I went to work for the Navy and was like a hazardous waste manager at a naval yard here south of New Orleans for another 6 months. And then I got a job doing
So wait, so you quit the law firm and then
Yep.
did a non-law job? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And was it because you couldn't find another job, or you were just like, you wanted to take a break?
No, I just had an 8-month-old kid, and I knew that law firm wasn't going to work out. And so I was just looking for anything that would get me out of that law firm. And so it wasn't that I didn't like the law, it was just that I knew that place was not for me. And so the best opportunity that I got was being a hazardous waste manager. And so it's funny to say, it's like a 24-year-old dumbass who never really worked doing hazardous waste management. And here I am being a hazardous waste manager. But it was interesting because you're working with a lot of by the book military folks. So they respected titles a lot more, I think, than just people do outside of that environment. And I was able to really, they had a big inspection coming up that they needed to pass, and was able to get the place in really good shape. Got that inspection passed. They offered me a full-time job after that, so it's like a contract worker for that period of time. And then I was like, take this job, I'm never going to do the law again. I just know it. And is that what I want? Am I to that point yet where I'm really willing to give up all those long nights, all those hard days to go and not, I won't say not use it, but not be a lawyer yet?
And that 2-lane private school tuition too, that you're probably carrying.
Yeah, you kind of were limited on the pay was good, but there was not a lot of upsides. The floor was high, but the ceiling was very low. I get into that type of work with the government. And yeah, I was like, so I just put out some feelers and ended up, actually the ad I responded to was, an old guy. It was a classified ad in
Oh,
the
wow.
newspaper.
Oh, for a law firm job?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
Yeah. And this is what it said. It said, looking for engineer dash lawyers. And I was like, that's me. So I responded and I just went and worked for a firm. And we were doing a lot of Hurricane Katrina litigation from the defense side, insurance defense, but also had an opportunity there to do some plaintiff's work and then do some environmental. It was defense side, but it was for like a small company that was a contractor for big oil companies. And they were getting sued along with the big oil companies for contamination in these neighborhoods and stuff. And so it's interesting it was really like the first time where for me, it wasn't black and white. It wasn't like you have a polluter and you have people who had no choice. This was just, they were exposed to these pollutants and they didn't even know it in the neighborhood. But this was like, okay, you have the polluter, like the oil company, you have the neighborhood, and you have this small company in the middle who's doing the work and getting all these things to clean. Well, they don't know that these things are polluted or contaminated with chemical that is harmful. They're just doing their job and their people didn't know and their owners didn't know. And so it's, hey, maybe it's not so black. How does this work? And did that for a few years right before I started my own firm.
Yeah, so tell me about starting your own firm. So it's obviously at some point you did it. What was the spark or the catalyst where you just said, I'm going to go do it? Did you have entrepreneurial streak growing up or what was it?
I won't say I had an entrepreneurial streak growing up. I always was just a hard worker. I just remember like getting up in like 8th grade summer, the first day of summer, and getting a phone call. Hey man, we got some work. Do you want to come work with us? And just saying, yeah. And go and pick up roofing nails for some guy who was a roofer in the neighborhood. It was just giving kids jobs around the neighborhood. And so they were up on the roof, doing the roofs. We were picking up the stuff on the bottom, building pools the next summer. It was just, so it was always just like a hard worker and knew like I could put in. And so I knew that wouldn't be a problem. But I think what really was the impetus, there was 2 things. One, there was this thing that was happening at the firm that just showed me that I could probably do it. Just gave me the confidence that I had the ability to maybe run my own firm. And then the second thing was, it was an external thing from the firm, but it was a family member, a cousin of mine. It's actually my mother's cousin, but my grandma called me one day and she was like, hey, and again, you got to remember, no one in our family even went to college, much less go to law school. So like I'm the person everyone in the family called for anything, legal or non-legal, within my realm of knowledge or not. If anyone knows how to fix it, it's going to be Loyd, right? That's how it was. And to an extent still is. But my grandmother called me and she was like, hey, your cousin, she's got brain cancer. She was getting disability, but her mom just told me they kicked her off. I don't know exactly what's going on. Can you call and figure it out? They need some help. So I just called her up and said, hey, what's going on? And so she explained to me what was happening as best she could because she had brain cancer and she wasn't 100%. And I said, look, I'm going to come over, give me whatever documents they have, and I'll take them with me and I'll figure it out. And that really set the stage for kind of my firm because just me figuring out, I knew I could put in the work, and that's what I did. I would stay late, I'd get up early, I'd work weekends, just trying to figure out what the heck was going on. How could this insurance company tell my cousin that she could work when it was clear to me it was impossible for her to? This was someone who had known me her whole life, right? She's my mother's age. Her, my mother, and my mom's sisters and all the great friends went to high school together, related to us. And I'm having a conversation with her, and she just stops me, puts a hand on my shoulder. Thank you for helping me, but can you tell me your name again? I'm like, how in the heck can you say this person can work? She don't even know people she's had in her life forever. And she was an insurance salesperson, and they were like, oh, she can sell insurance on the phone. And I was like, I was flabbergasted, man. Like, it was mind blowing. And so I figured out how to fight that battle. It took me a little while, but I figured it out. And then like along the way, I just started like a WordPress blog and just was blogging about what I learned, blogging about the stories I was reading, blogging about what I was doing. And just to help me, sometimes you got to write it down to help you see it better. It just helped me to put it out there. And then people just started contacting me. It was like, hey, I'm going through the same thing. Can you help? Hey, that's crazy. They're telling me I can work and it's the same exact situation. Can you help me? And that was happening at the same time. Like we had this big case that was coming up at the firm and I had never been to trial before. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. And the boss was like, I'm going to Spain for 2 months with my family. Just figure it out. And I was like,
He dropped the case on you for trial?
yeah. I was
Oh,
like, I
man.
don't know what I'm doing yet, man. But we figured it out. We worked it up. We got in a good spot. We ended up resolving it right before trial. But I was like, okay, if I can do all that, and now I have this kind of like niche that just came upon me, let's just give it a go, man. Let's just try it. What's the worst that can happen is you don't succeed and you go back to another firm.
It's interesting you talk about the blog that you did on disability because I have a similar story for like my practice area. I think the firm you were at didn't do disability because I was at a firm that didn't do what I do now. And I got interested in it and I just started learning it. And then I would do a blog post every
Mm-hmm.
week, a deep dive in certain little areas. And then I would just put it out there. And I did that for every week for 3.5 years. And I would send emails out and I would just tell people about it.
Yeah,
And number one, it's how I learned it. It's how I became known. I mean, I was writing articles and stuff too. And it's just like the classic education based
yeah,
development of a practice area. It's cool. That's how you did it as well. I guess
yeah.
nowadays blogs aren't really a thing so much anymore. I guess you do something else now, videos or.
It was interesting. Like I said, man, there was not a lot of people writing about it. Probably your same situation. And so what happens, like I was getting people that called for me to help them, but then I just started getting calls from other attorneys. Hey man, I stumbled on your blog and I saw you writing about this. And so obviously what the heck's going on? And I got this case and I just wanted your opinion on it. And I'm like, I don't really know either, man. I'm willing to tell you what I know.
Let me get back to you on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so you developed this practice area of the disability and you had the confidence, you knew you could get a case ready for trial and you said, all right, I'm doing it. You were married at the time, right? You had kids or how old were your
Yeah.
kids?
Yeah. We were married. I was married. Still married. At that time, I had 2 children. They were, let's see, my son was probably 5. My daughter was like 3. And then my wife was pregnant with our 3rd child. I left the firm. I think the official start date of this firm is like September 1st of 2010. My 3rd son was born in November of 2000. So we were like in a big transition period in our own life as well. My wife, she's always been very supportive and very helpful to like the ultimate partner, like exactly what you want in life. Just look, if this is what you believe, if you think this is going to help us as a family and this is what you believe, then let's do it. Let's do it and we'll give it a shot. And if it doesn't work, we'll figure it out. And you can't really, it means a lot to have that kind of support at home when you are making a big decision like that. And you know what? I've never had to go back to another firm. I'm not saying it won't happen. Having that from the beginning, even to now, has been very beneficial.
That's huge. I know that's huge because if you were going different directions, it'd make it way harder.
Yeah,
May doom it from the beginning.
that's right. It's already a stressful time, and you need a little sanity somewhere. And if you're stressing about this new firm you're trying to build and develop, and you're stressing at home about not having on the same page, not with this on the thinking the firm's the way to go, man, then you really don't have anywhere to get that sanity, and it has been very helpful.
Real quick, thanks for listening. If you're getting any value out of this podcast, please take 2 seconds to hit the subscribe button and leave a 5-star review. It would really mean a lot to me. Now back to the show. All right, so you had the confidence, you had the desire, you had your wife on board. So let's talk about the rest of it. Did you have money saved up? Did you have cases that were coming with you to start, or were you starting from just zero?
Yeah, it was pretty much zero. Like I said, the firm I was at, we didn't do disability at all. I did my cousin's case as a one-off and didn't really have any other cases in the hopper. But I knew that we could make a go. Now my wife did work, and she still works full time. So that gave us a baseline of financial certainty that we knew we could count on. But we did. I knew what's coming. It didn't happen like overnight, and so we saved up a bit to, I think, more to give myself the cushion to know that I could get it done, and gave myself a timeline. Hey, this is the money. It's going to run out in a year. And so you either got to be well on your way to making it succeed, or you got to go get another job. Um, and so I did have a year's worth of, if Loyd doesn't bring in $1, we can survive as a family. But we never even had to tap into that.
It happened.
It just happened. It's just weird to say. We had all these plans and we had this kind of contingency, but we never really had to. Because once people knew that I was out on my own, I started getting a lot of disability cases. Like I said, we had that blog early on, but we were also very good at just marketing. I know you and I know each other kind of through Great Legal Marketing, GLM. I was reading some of that stuff way back then and trying to implement, even then, before I could pay for it, implementing some of those principles, implementing some of those kind of techniques and tactics into my marketing, and really just built a good website on my own. When I didn't have cases or the phone wasn't ringing, I was just working on building a web presence and it as good as I could make it. And that really just snowballed into more cases. Like people will say, oh, we saw you. I never really spent a lot of money on marketing because a lot of times did it myself. Like I said, my wife's a computer engineer, so any kind of technical stuff, I'd be like, hey, can you figure this out for me?
Nice, yeah.
It was pretty easy to get that figured out. But
so real quick, so when you left, you had no cases and you were focusing on the disability. Was that all you were focusing on? Had you gotten into the PI stuff yet, or did you have any other just like random hourly stuff?
yeah, so again, I'm in a small town. Our town is maybe 15,000 people. Our parish, which is like a county in most places, is maybe 50,000 people total. But it's a bedroom community to New Orleans. But being in a small town and opening up your door, you can want to focus on one specific case type, but every case type's going to come through the door and be like, hey, I need help with this, and I need help with that, and I need help with this. And especially early on, we took a lot of stuff. Most of our cases, 70-80% of our cases were disability cases, but we did other things for folks. We did wills, successions or probate cases, and traffic tickets and auto crash cases. One of the reasons we never marketed for those things. That was just people like knowing I was a lawyer in town, other people saying, hey, if you got this problem, call Loyd. So we never marketed for that kind of stuff, but we always kind of got other things. And I think that's probably why we didn't have to dip into that reserve we had, because these disability cases, they take a while. You're talking 18 months, 2 years. It's not uncommon to take that longer. So even if I got 10 cases on day one, it's going to take that long to pay out.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to do some other things along the way to help grease the wheel, so to speak. And so we always took those things and we were always focused on just doing the best job we could, while also being a human that they could talk. Because that's what I found is people have problems. They trust you to solve them, but they want to know. They don't necessarily want to know your recipe for solving it. They just want to know they're a part of what you're thinking about. And so we always really made a big effort at communication, talking to clients, sending stuff out to them, keeping them in the loop. And that just started paying off in spades over time. You start doing a good job for that. They know you do disability. They send you disability stuff, or you're doing a disability case and then they get in a car crash. And they're like, hey, I know I got a lot of choices, but I know you did a great job. And I know that you pick up the phone. I know you call people back. And over time, we were able to stop taking a lot of those other cases and focus on just the disability and injury cases. But we still approach it with that same mentality.
Yeah, so let me unpack that just a little bit. So early on, this is the community you grew up in, I think. And so you knew people, they knew you went out. They're coming to you with all sorts of problems. You're doing everything to get the cash flow. And then slowly you sort of niche into your disability PI practice. But I'm sure today you're still getting looks of all these other kind of cases probably still.
Yes.
What do you do with them now? Do you send those out? How do you handle those now?
Yeah, so we're still in the kind of same small town. We just tell them like, hey, we don't take this type of case, but we have a great referral partner that we can get you connected with. Do you want us to have that person call you, or do you want to call them? And like 99% of the time, they're like, oh, if you can give them my name so they call me, I'd appreciate it. And so we just through our case management system, we send out a message to referral partner. It just depends on the case. We got different referral partners all over. And what we look for is the same thing that we would give to our clients. When people were going to pick up the phone and call them, when we send something over to them, that they're going to respond and say, "Hey man, thanks so much for sending this. I'm going to get on the phone." And then they tell us, "Hey, I took the case. I didn't take the case." Because we tell the people who call us, because a lot of times they're calling us because they read our reviews. They know us in some way from this community. They were referred to us that, "Hey, look, we're going to send this person your name. If you don't hear from them, call us back. We'll figure out what's going on. We'll find you a new referral partner." Yeah. And so it's hard to do that. What I tell my team, and I tell them, man, if you let me do intake, we will have every one of those cases because I can't tell them no. That's why I have to hire you to do intake, because I trust you to tell them I need to refer you out, because I just really think that I'm going to be able to.
That says a lot, man. That's why they're calling in the first place, because they know you. Yeah. So you mentioned it. You grew up in this town. It's a small town. Small town practice is different than a big city practice. I know you're close to New Orleans, but how is it? I know sometimes in the smaller towns, it's hard to niche up because you got to take whatever. So how have you been able to create this niche practice in the small town?
It just really started again with the vision, right? To have the niche. So even though early on we could not sustain just doing disability and injury stuff, and we were taking other cases, the only thing we ever marketed for were disability and injury cases. And so people would come to us for these other things, but we never marketed for that. We wouldn't tell them no. We'd help them as best we could. And because our vision was always to try to get to a spot where it was just injury and disability cases. And we knew if we started, even early on, we knew if we started saying we could do all these other things, it's gonna be hard to pull back from that. You leave a lot of people disappointed. And so even early on, like, our website was just Louisiana disability law. I took all kind of stuff, but that was our website. And if you went on our website, there was nothing else other than disability and injuries.
Just real quick, I 100% agree with that approach. And there's so many lawyers out there that are scared to niche down in their marketing message. They're like,
Yeah.
but I do these other things, they won't come. And it's been my experience and other attorneys I've talked to and yours that you niche down in your marketing, but it doesn't stop the flow of all these other types of cases. And it actually might make it easier. I don't know. Because if you're
It
trying to be
definitely makes
everything to
it easier.
everybody, you
Yeah,
can't even make any coherent message, right?
right. It definitely makes it easy from a marketing perspective. I'm not trying to talk to everyone. I'm just trying to talk to people who need an injury attorney or a disability attorney. That's a specific problem. I'm not trying to talk to a guy who's looking to form a business or a lady who's looking to open an accounting firm. I'm not trying to talk to those with my messages. Now, if they called or walked in, it doesn't mean I'm not going to talk to them and be nice to them and try to give them something to help them along the way. It just means I'm not like out there actively trying to talk to them. And that was our kind of approach from the beginning, was knowing that we wanted a firm eventually that we could just focus on injury and disability stuff, and really having that vision early on and being true to it and saying, okay, we may have to take some other things along the way, but that doesn't mean we have to go out into the marketplace and tell everybody that's let's just be focused on telling them this is what we do. And yeah, so over time, that's kind of how it developed, is from saying this is what we want, then it being a big mix, to continuing to say, hey, this is what we want, this type of cases we're best at, this type of people we help, to where now most of the people who call us are looking for injury or disability case. We still get other calls, but it's definitely not as big a percentage as it was in those early days.
So kudos to you for very early picking your vision and sticking with it and doing the website and your marketing message. I think a lot of people don't have the fortitude or the backbone to do that. They're too scared. So that's good. So let's talk about your marketing stuff now. You're good with your message. You've been doing it for a while now. What sorts of things do you do that you find are effective for your practice area, maybe that apply to a small town? I think the disability you do nationwide.
Yeah.
What sort of marketing approaches do you use that you find effective nowadays?
I just think the biggest thing is, one, just showing up, doing it, and being authentic about it. It's not yes, it's what we do, it's what we're good at, but beyond that, it's we do it because we want to help you. We know what you are going through, and we've helped plenty of clients just like you get through this to the other side. And really being authentic with that message, and not just for me, but really from our whole team. right? And that has, on our website and our marketing materials, like I'm the face, so to speak, the face of the firm. But the way we approach it as a firm is that every interaction with every client, every vendor is an opportunity to market our services by being authentically us. And especially when you get into injury cases, right? You don't really see that type of approach in injury cases. And you don't see it too much in disability cases because that's traditionally a high volume, low profit practice area where people are just trying to turn the case. Well, that's not the approach we take. And so we try to get that kind of feeling that people are going to experience when they work with our team. We try to bring that out in every interaction. And so I think that's the underlying theme of our approach is just be us. If we were looking for help, what type of people would we want to help us? And so that's who we try. That's how we approach every interaction, every marketing. I would say from a small town perspective, one of the things that we do really well and really could probably do better is just we are trying to be a part of our community. Yeah, like you said, I grew up in this town. My wife's parents live where she grew up was 5 blocks away from my office. My house is 3 blocks the other way. It takes me 3 minutes to drive here.
Oh, man.
People know
So
us, right?
nice. Yeah.
People know us. Our kids went to school here. I coached here. I'm on the sidelines at games to show up to the high school events, but I don't just show up and I'm there. We sponsor the teams and not just sponsor with a little logo with everything else there. We try to do other things like, hey, if we see a need, a few years ago we were at a game, it was raining, the team had these tents that they were leaking. We're like, hey, how about we buy them some tents for the football games that they can stand under? Yeah, so we called them up and we're like, hey, can we buy you guys some tents and brand it with the school logos and school colors? We'll put our name on the side. We would love it. We go to every game now, they're up there.
Nice.
A few years ago, they were doing like the little robotics things at the football games where they shoot like t-shirts. We didn't have a lot of t-shirts, but we just called them up and we're like, hey, we'll buy all the shirts, put our name on the back, put the school logo on the front. Let's give them to you. You can shoot them all game long. And they're like, oh, we would love that. Now, they use that as a springboard to then try to get more stuff, which is fine. But it was just, again, just being in your community, looking for ways that you can help, but also in a way that highlights your commitment to your community.
Yeah. That's some of the benefits, I think, of a smaller town. You're almost like the shadow mayor, right? Maybe that's in your future too.
I don't know about that, but yeah, but I agree. But it's easier to do in a small community. But here's the thing, it's easy to do that in a big city too, because every big city has neighborhoods. Every big city has little communities within them that you can just become like the person for that community. And it doesn't take a ton of people to support your firm for you to be successful.
Yeah, you get your clients, you're out in the community, you get your clients in and you treat them like this really caring sort of journey through your firm and through their case. And then after you're done with them, I imagine you've got some systems to stay in touch with all those people you've helped. And because you give them a good feeling while they were there, just continue the good feeling, right? So what sorts of things do you do to stay in touch with your former clients?
Yeah, obviously we do the printed newsletter that we send every month. We do like quarterly just postcards, birthday cards, but we do hand signed birthday cards from the whole team. And if they're local, if they're in Louisiana, we just buy a $1 lottery ticket and throw it in there.
Has anybody won yet?
Yeah, man, they call us. Nobody's retired off of it, but they do call us like, oh my God, this is so awesome. Like I won $3, I won $5, different things like that. And they're like, it seems so simple to just send. You got their birthday. You already got a database with your case management stuff in it. They're like, man, you're like the only person I get a birthday. It's just, to me, I get birthday cards from people all the time. On my birthday, my wife gets them, my kids get them, but not everybody has that in their life. But if you can be that person for them, that one person, man, it means a lot. And we love doing it. They call and they want to say thank you for sending it. It means a lot. So those are just some ways we try to just stay updated with what's going on in their life. If their kids get married, we send out, I have some of the team just, hey, look, we try to friend our clients on Facebook so we can see what's going on, or Instagram, so that when they post good stuff, we want to celebrate with them. We'll send them a thank you note. Hey, man, or just a little congratulatory. Saw your son graduating this month. Man, that's so awesome. glad you helped them get to that point in life. Just small little things that can help them know that you are still, and they will be aware of it.
And like you said, that those sorts of things go so far. We take for granted sometimes how far those things can go. So I want to shift a little bit and talk about the operation of the running of your firm.
Mhm.
And it's a two-part question. So I want to ask, as you've been doing this a long time now on your own, as you look back, what was the biggest challenge in running your firm in the early days? And then, as with anything, problems don't go away, they just change. So what's the bigger challenges you see nowadays?
I would say I look at my firm as really having two lives. So when I left the firm that I was working at and started on my own, from that point until probably like 2017, we were what you would consider a traditional solo firm. It was just me. And that was by design because my kids were young. I knew I wanted to be heavily involved in their life. I didn't want to be beholden to a calendar or a caseload that would not allow me to do that. And so I really tried to limit the firm at that point. Like I didn't want to grow it. I just needed enough to sustain a minimum level. And so in those days, it was like the balance of, especially in a contingency firm, it's great cash flow, poor cash flow, great cash flow, poor cash flow. And that's like those peaks and valleys are like years at a time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just trying to maintain a consistency of reserve to deal with the bottoms when we were at the tops. Because I didn't want to grow too big. I didn't want the firm to take so much of my time that I couldn't be there for my wife and kids as they were growing up. I wanted to put them on the bus and get them off the bus and go and be a coach of soccer and baseball and basketball, whatever they wanted to play. I wanted to coach them, and I wanted to go to the meets, swim meets during the summer in the middle of the day, and not have to worry about those things. So that was the first, like 2017. Then in 2000, as my kids started getting older, my oldest son at that point was like a teenager. My younger one was where I was starting to coach him, but my older one was aging off where he was going into like upper middle school and high school, and he was going to play school sports, and I didn't have to coach him as much anymore. Then we started really trying to grow the firm. And so I think from then until now has really been our period of we've grown from just me to the 8 people. We've been as high as 12 people. We're at 8 now, trying to probably get back to 10 in the next 3 to 5 months, I think. The difficulties during that period, just getting the right people. It just seems to be a challenge. We run with some of the same folks sometimes, man, and it just doesn't seem to matter if you're a small firm just starting out, if you've been there for a long time with 100 people. The biggest thing people get frustrated about is just making sure you got the right people.
The longer you do this, the more you realize there's just the absolute truth of that. Early on, you think, or if you're not doing it, you think the biggest problem is getting the cases, or the biggest problem is figuring out the technology to use, whatever. It's no. The biggest problem is getting the damn good people in there and then keeping them.
Yeah. So the people has been the issue, and then just trying to get your culture. It doesn't take much to ruin it. That old saying, like that one bad apple spoils the whole barrel, and it really holds a lot of sense when it comes to firm cultures, man. It doesn't take much. It's hard to build up, and it takes a long time to get it right, and you think you got it right, and it just takes one ego to bring it all down. And it's hard to always be on top of that. Always try to be mindful of that to where it doesn't. And it takes a lot of energy. That I didn't think that was going to be a problem or ever be an issue, but it is. It's just one of those things that.
Yeah, it's just a couple of things that I'd point out from what you said for people listening. I guess number one is your firm is or can be whatever you want it to be. Early on, you said, hey, this is what I want it to be, just me, small time, whatever. So I have the freedom to go coach the teams and do this and that. You don't have to. You go out there now, there's all these messages about getting the biggest firm in the world or doing this or making a gazillion dollars. And that might be for some people, but it's not for everybody. That's the first thing I'd say. And that's the cool thing about starting your firm. You can make it what you want. And then the other piece is deciding to grow. You mentioned that. I think you've got to decide to grow if that's what you want. It's not just going to happen accidentally. You got to make the decision and start taking the risk and taking the actions, right?
Yeah, I'm not saying it can't happen, right? Anything can happen, right? You might get that one big case that just sets you up and gives you a big. You might get that one great client who's going to pay their bills on time and never complain and send you more work than you know what to do with. But the odds of that happening that way are very low. Whereas if you vision it out, put a plan in place, as we were talking about before, man, just that if you build it type of mentality, if you build it, they will come type of mentality. You have to see it and work towards it, make decisions that are in line with making that kind of vision come true.
So as you're sitting here today, what's your vision for the next, I don't know, however many years? Where do you want to take it?
Yeah, we're like in a transition stage right now, again, right? Going from zero to deciding we wanted to grow was like a 7 year thing. From deciding to grow to where we are now is like a 7 year thing. And we're really, what we envision is growing our injury practice more, bigger, having a few more attorneys with us. When I say a few more, I'm thinking probably within the next 4 or 5 years, we'll probably have 5 injury attorneys. And then the big decision point for us, and it's something that we're struggling with, is just Social Security and how to best manage that or to manage it. And just one of those things that, as I'm sitting here today talking to you, I don't really have it figured out yet. And it's not comfortable for me to not have it figured out, but I also know it's okay to not have it figured out just yet. And that part of it is, part of the plan is working to try to figure it out. That in letting that fester, sometimes you can come up with maybe some ideas or pathways or things that you didn't really think about or see right away can materialize. And so that's where we are right now as we move forward into 2025 and beyond.
I know you're figured out. I know you will. So just keep at it. But so if I'm a lawyer out there, thinking about starting my firm, or maybe I've taken the plunge and I'm on the early side of it, what sort of advice would you give to that lawyer?
Yeah, just be fearless in asking for help and guidance, man. Like, none of us can do this alone. None of us have figured it out by ourselves. And I didn't know this when I was starting my firm, but man, so many people are so generous and willing to help. And sometimes it's just giving you an ear and letting you talk it out. That will help you. And sometimes that's what you need, is someone who will just do that for you. Sometimes you do need some specific advice. And there are plenty of folks like you, like many of the members of the mastermind groups we belong to, that are willing to listen and give you guidance that can help you along your journey. But you just got to be willing to ask them. You got to be willing to say, hey, I don't know this. I'm fearful of this. And whether it's a business issue or a legal issue, there's always going to be someone who's figured it out already. You just got to be willing to ask enough people to get to that one who's willing to share with you.
It's amazing too, people that are ahead or even behind, no matter where they are, and including yourself, you've got something that they don't know about, and they've got something you don't know about. So there's
Yep.
just so much to learn. Every time I talk to somebody, I get a new little nugget. I'm like, that's awesome. I'm going to start trying to use that. And again, it's from people that by all appearances are way ahead, and then people who by all appearances are just starting out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I just think when we start our businesses, we're very confident. You got to be confident to start. And sometimes you think, man, if I ask somebody, it's going to let them know I'm not as confident as maybe I seem. Maybe I don't really know what's going on. But listen, man, that's how we all are. We were all there. We're all still there to some extent in many areas. And just be fearless in asking.
Great advice. So Loyd, I appreciate you coming on today, man. I'm
Having
glad we've gotten to know each other. For anybody out there that wants to get in touch with you, if they have any questions or they got a case down your way,
Yeah.
what's the best way to find you?
Yeah, so you can find us on all the social media platforms. It's Loyd J. Bourgeois. Loyd with one L. It's weird. As I told you earlier in this broadcast, my family's very poor, so we couldn't afford that second L for that ink on the birth certificate, so we just ended up with one. But anyway, it's a little unique, and so it's Loyd, Loyd, J. Bourgeois is how we show up on LinkedIn and Facebook or Instagram. If you want to reach out to me directly, just my name, Loyd at L.
And you've got that good Louisiana last name too, right?
Yeah, Bourgeois, man. It's been spelled every which way but correct by most people.
I think I told you the story, but When I was in middle school in Mobile, we had this girl move over from New Orleans, and her last name was Bourgeois. She came in, she told us how to do it, right? New Orleans is a little different.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, well, cool. There's something we didn't get to talk about. Maybe next time we'll talk about it, is all the good food down there. You got to give us some lessons on how to cook it.
Man, I was just talking to someone yesterday. Actually, I was in a mediation yesterday, a client from up in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And he was like, man, I love New Orleans. The food down here is so good. He said, what do you cook? And I was like, well, I cook most of it. When you invite me over.
Yeah. Cool, Loyd. Again, man, appreciate it, and look forward to staying in touch.
Yep. Thanks, Jonathan. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Founding Partner Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts to stay up to date on the latest episodes. You can also connect with Jonathan on LinkedIn and check out the show notes with links to resources mentioned throughout our discussion by visiting www.lawfirmgc.com. We'll see you next time for more origin stories and insights from successful law firm founders.